portend. Much more even than people out of Catholicism background. People out of evangelical or fundamentalist background are really into scriptural interpretation. And they heard a lot about it, and that's what most of my students were like that when I first came here in the 70s. Anyway, so these people are internal adversaries now. The traitors to the laws of God, that's in parentheses, so we're not sure that's exactly what the text says. It's, it's a bit badly preserved here. But what we do see is, since they did not believe in the covenant of God and something about defiling his holy name. So these people who were there are traitors, traitors to the righteous teacher, traitors to something having to do with God's laws. And the interpretation of the passage, Pesher HaDavar, interpretation of the concerns, and seems to be the traitors again to the last days, although that's not sure. Anything in parentheses is not sure, it's just a reconstruction. Something to do, it looks like they're violent ones, and they are certainly, it looks like covenant breakers. And they did not believe, but this is sure, all that was going to happen to the last generation from the mouth of the priest. Now, you see here, he's called the priest. HaKohen, for those of you who know Hebrew. HaKohen is priest. But in Jewish text, the priest always means the high priest. It doesn't mean any old priests. It's the high priest. It's the way they spoke about the Kohen, HaKohen HaGadol, the high priest. So this righteous teacher is also the high priest. But what kind of high priest? How do we know it's the same person? Because we say here he's the priest, and in his heart God put the intelligence, and in column 7 it's the righteous teacher to whom God knew all the mysteries of the words of his servants the prophets. So we know these are the same people. The righteous teacher and the priest are the same people, but this is not the wicked priest. I hope I'm not losing. This is not the wicked priest. The wicked priest will come. He's really bad for them, but he's not the priest. Now, the wicked priest is also a high priest, but it's quite clear he's the establishment high priest. So this is kind of like the opposition high priest. The opposition to the high priest of this movement. In other words, they have the righteous teacher is also the high priest. Now again, those of you who are in Christianity know about the letter to the Hebrews. And you know that Jesus is the righteous and pious high priest, above all other purity of high priest, but he's also supposed to be the Messiah. So he's both Messiah and high priest. Well, it doesn't say that the righteous teacher is Messiah. I don't think they're saying that. But the righteous teacher is both teacher and high priest. And but what kind of high priest are these? Are they the official high priest? Not probably where Rome and the Herodians were concerned. But I think at some points they do control the temple. They do get into the temple and control it when the zealots take over the temple. When the zealots take over the temple in Josephus, they kill all the high priests. Well, why do they kill all the high priests? Why would the zealots kill all the high priests? In particular, the man responsible for the death of James, a person called Ananus. Say, where is that? It's in the Jewish war. And Josephus makes a big thing of it because he doesn't like Ananus much. The reason we know Josephus doesn't like Ananus much is because in the Vita he talks about illegal olive oil operations that he and Ananus were involved with when he was like commissar of Galilee, responsible for the defense of Galilee. That is, Josephus was responsible for the defense of Galilee. If you got people like Josephus responsible for the defense of your territory, you might as well hand it over to the Romans to begin with, because it's hopeless. And I think Josephus was turned because he says he went to Rome on behalf of some pious priests in the early 60s or late 50s when he was just a young boy, more or less. So he's from a very influential family. It's in his Vita, his autobiography, as we call it, the Vita of Josephus. And I think it was in this particular trip he took, these people had gone to Rome earlier and were in prison. but this trip he took was around 64 AD, I think. Anyway, there he said he was introduced to Nero's wife, Poppaea, by a Jewish actor. You know how Nero liked acting and that kind of thing, liked to go on the stage? That's a famous myth about Nero and so on. And so he obviously kept company with actors of that kind. So that by the way, that series Rome is pretty good for the atmosphere in Rome at this time, if you ever saw it on HBO last year. But he goes and he meets Nero's wife, Poppaea, whom he says was interested in religious causes. And she sent him away with many gifts. Shortly thereafter, Nero kicked her to death. She was pregnant and he kicked her to death, kicked her in the stomach. Nice chap that he was. And, I just have a joke thing, maybe the baby was Josephus. Who knows what Josephus was doing there? It didn't have to be just him, but Josephus liked to pass himself off as a prophet, as a religious figure, like a Simon Magus type. You know, he goes before Vespasian and he proclaims him the world ruler that would come out of Palestine to rule the world. He does this in his Vita and in the war when he's supposed to be the commandant of Galilee, and he surrenders, if you remember, I told you about that. They're all in a cave in Galilee, he and 8 or 9 other people, and then they are supposed to kill themselves because that's the zealot way, rather than surrender. And Josephus says he and an associate, gave everyone straws to pick by lot. And he said, he and I drew the short straws. That means we could kill all of the others. I'm sure he cooked it. And then what did he do? He went out and surrendered. That's just disgusting behavior. And then he proclaims Vespasian the world ruler that would come out of Palestine, the ruler that would destroy Jerusalem and the temple. This is the Messiah that would come out of Palestine. You can't get more cynical than that, as I've told you over and over again. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the hero of Rabbinic Judaism, is portrayed as doing the same thing. That's where I don't have a lot of respect for these people personally. That's me. You don't have to feel like I do, but I don't think they're cynical. Say, oh, well, that's fine. I meet many religious Jews who tell me, oh, that's fine. They were just being, pragmatic. Well, yeah, you can be pragmatic and save your skin, or you can be honest and sincere and die. The zealots were honest and sincere and died. There's quite a difference between people who try to save their skin. I take up someone like me. Suppose I were there at that time. I'd like to go off and think about that. What would I do? What would you do?